2 weeks from now, New York City has to go and vote because Mayor Bill de Blasio is up for re-election. And he's here this morning. He's going to hit on some key issues that bug all of us, like traffic congestion.
And, of course, earlier in the week, the mayor unveiled a 5-point plan to ease congestion. But critics are also saying this is not going to work. It's going to be bad for business. Mayor joining us now this morning, bright and early.
What, there's critics? I never heard there were critics out there. Oh,
You
wow.
are used to
what,
that,
New Yorkers who have strong opinions?
Do you think? You talked about that on Sunday when you were laying out your plan.
Yeah.
I mean, part of it, when you were talking about blocking the box, you were saying that New Yorkers know how to use very colorful language.
Oh,
so
yeah.
you certainly, I watch. But there has been criticism over this 5-point plan that you've come up, particularly when it comes to delivery trucks and not allowing pedestrians on the side during, given hours that are crucial to business and for deliveries.
Yeah, but let me offer you this idea. Right now, the status quo with the traffic is crazy. And when you see something that's not working, you can't keep doing it the same way. What's the definition of sanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result? We have a congestion problem. It's not just Midtown Manhattan, which is the worst. It's a lot of the outer boroughs as well. So we said, let's do something different. Let's ban deliveries during rush hour and see what it does for us. Because why should delivery trucks, when we're all trying to get places the busiest time of the day, why would a delivery truck be right in the middle of that when they could go during the other hours of the day? We want to test and see if that changes things. And block the box. Everyone knows one car, one truck can mess up hundreds of people's days. Why would we not go after that? It shouldn't happen. We're going to put the traffic enforcement agents there. We're going to put the police there to move the traffic.
50 extra police.
Yeah, and we're going to put them right where the biggest problem is.
So you're not wedded to those hours. They could change. You're saying that we're just testing this out.
We're testing. We said explicitly it's a 6-month pilot. It's in 3 places. It's Flatbush Avenue in Brooklyn, Roosevelt Avenue in Queens, and a part of Midtown that's particularly congested. Let's try it. But why on earth would we want delivery trucks in the middle of rush hour?
You know what, Mayor? I think you're on to something. However, some of the critics say you're not really addressing the problem because small business owners are really going to hurt. They're going to have to bring in people either overnight or earlier in the day. It's going to cost them more money to do something like this. And then on top of that, we got the Uber, we got the Lyft, we got the Via drivers, which, they may be causing more of the congestion than the trucks. I think there was one newspaper out there that recorded from 5 to 7 how many trucks were actually on the road in Midtown. It was 1 compared to the hundreds. That's what they said. That's what I'm saying.
I drive all around, and I used to drive myself all around. I can tell you there's plenty of delivery trucks in the morning and in the afternoon rush hour that are in the way.
But what about the businesses who, listen, it's tough to do business in New York City. It's expensive.
It's tough, and we're trying to find a lot of ways to help small business, including reducing the horrible fines. In the previous administration, there was an intense choice to go and fine small business all the time. We've reduced that by 40%. We've lightened the burden on small business. But let me tell you, I'm talking about 6 hours out of 24 hours. 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. in the morning, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. in the afternoon. We're trying it. Now, look, if it doesn't work, we're going to go with other strategies.
How quick would you change strategy? Because what happens if those trucks are trying to get in here by 6 o'clock? 5:45, they realize they're not going to make it. Where do they park? Where do they go? Where do they stand until it's time to, you get the green light?
I understand the question, but I'm telling you, people are adaptable, and they understand. We're talking about some of the busiest, most congested parts in New York City. During the rush hour, when everyone's trying to get around, we're asking the trucks to just choose the other hours. They got all the middle of the day, they got the evening, there's plenty of other options. I don't think it's going to be such a burden on small business, but you know what? This is why we try things. The status quo right now is not working. It's ridiculous.
It's crazy.
Let's try something different and see if it gets us somewhere.
Would you also consider on the weekends, because it's hell getting around New York City in the weekends, we consider giving out permission and licenses to festivals? There was one day you had a parade on 5th Avenue, festival on Park, festival on Lex. The east side of Manhattan was at a standstill on Sunday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
I think the question there is figuring out what the right size these events are. Some of them can be the size they are. Some of them might be smaller. Figuring out what works. With the parades, and this is something Bloomberg did, I agreed with. He tried to figure out with some of these parades, did they need as much space? Could they do it in fewer blocks? And they made the adjustments and it worked. It's the kind of thing you always have to look at because we're trying to fix something. We've got more congestion than ever. We have more people than ever. Let's face it, some of this is we have the biggest population we ever had. We have the most jobs we've ever had. We have the most tourists we've ever had. There's a reason. We have a ton of construction, which is a good thing in many ways, but comes with disadvantages. But we've got to adjust our strategies. This is where things like really going after Block the Box with serious enforcement, changing the hours for the deliveries during rush hour. These are things that offer a chance. And also these streets that we're going to establish where you can park on one side, deliver on one side, but we keep the other side free during key hours of the day to help, and key streets, particularly in Midtown, to help the flow of traffic. We got to try these things.
All right, let's talk about traffic in a different sense. Subway system.
Yes.
Antiquated, more and more commuters, more headaches, more problems, homeless. We saw the other day, and I know you saw, of course, a homeless man who was sitting under one of the cars. Right, it's unacceptable. Do you feel like everybody's sort of piling on you when it comes to Cuomo, when it comes to Loda, when it comes to the PBA? At the same time, why aren't you budging?
Because I think the solution I'm offering is the right one, a millionaire's tax to fix the subways. This
but
is
it's not a millionaire's tax. It's what, for those making $500,000?
It's overwhelmingly a millionaire's tax, I assure you. The millionaire's tax would allow us to get about $800 million a year. That money would go to the long-term fixes we need in the subway. Right now, the subway doesn't have a consistent revenue stream. That's part of the problem. The tough decisions were not made that needed to be made, and the investments weren't made. And that's why it's breaking down. With a millionaire's tax, you get $800 million a year, and you can put that money into fixing the MTA for the long term. Now, here's the thing we have to realize. The MTA is run by the state of New York. It's run by the governor. That responsibility is now finally clear, and that's good. Just like I have mayoral control of education, if there's an issue with the schools, bring it to me. We now know very clearly who runs the subway. But we need that revenue. The idea I have is the one that would give us the longest sustained revenue to actually fix the problem. I'm outraged because what I hear from my constituents all day, this isn't working. The subway system's not working for them, so we got to do something that will fix it.
When you delayed and delayed and delayed, people are saying, what am I paying for? I'm getting on the subway and spending more time.
That's dirty, that's not running on time.
Right, and it could be a lot different, but it needs a consistent revenue stream.
Now, the city, Loda, Joe Loda, and the governor saying that the city owes the MTA money, and that would help. Would you give this money to help fund it to move it forward quickly?
I said it really clearly. The state of New York took $456 million from the MTA, from taxes devoted to the MTA. They were specifically earmarked for the MTA. They diverted it to other things. Put the money back. The state needs to put the money back. That would cover literally all of Loda's short-term plan.
I know, but does the city owe the MTA money?
The city pays the MTA in so many ways already.
So we don't owe them anything?
No. And we pay into the MTA as strap hangers. We pay into the MTA. The city of New York puts a huge amount of money into the MTA consistently. I gave them $2.5 billion that I was not obligated to 2 years ago to help with some of their capital needs. That's the problem here is, one, take responsibility. The state needs to take responsibility. Two, give back the money they took from the MTA. Three, we need a long-term revenue. That's why the millionaire's tax plan.
I brought up the homelessness. When you first ran, that was one of your big points that you wanted to bring down homelessness in the city. It isn't at the clip that people would like to see by any means. You and Cuomo have gone back and forth on whose obligation that is to take care of it. And you're the mayor of the city.
I have not gone back and forth with Cuomo on this. That's my obligation. I've been clear. This is my responsibility. I've been very clear about it. I wish I had done some things differently. I take full responsibility. I think the plan we have now is the best chance we have to turn the tide. But I've said very clearly, New Yorkers, this problem's been growing for 35 years. It's going to be a long battle. But I think what we're finding finally is progress on getting people off the street. There's two parts of homelessness, people on the street and people in shelter. They're both a huge problem. But what really tears at people is when you see folks on the street.
Absolutely.
It's very upsetting.
They're everywhere.
And it's very upsetting.
Everywhere, you're right.
But here's the thing we found. Over the last year and a half, with an intensive outreach effort, and we work with a lot of faith-based organizations and nonprofit organizations that specialize in reaching these people who overwhelmingly have mental health issues, the folks on the street, or substance abuse issues. Very, very intensive outreach, literally going to people. If it takes 100 times, 200 times to win their trust, convince them to come in. We've gotten 900 people to come off the street in a year and a half and stay off the street. If this continues, this will be a huge game changer. But it's going to take so much work. I just have to be honest with New Yorkers. It's going to take a lot of work because this problem's been building for a long time. But it's my responsibility. In fact, I said when I heard about that guy sleeping under the bench on the subway, I said it's unacceptable. And it's my responsibility to get our NYPD and our outreach workers down there in whatever numbers it takes to address the problem in the subways.
Meanwhile, the PBA, the governor, everybody was like piling on you for, I mean, you saw what the PBA said. They said something like, the governor is right. Other politicians should listen. The mayor needs to be, you know, enforcing this on the subways.
And I believe in enforcing it. I don't get worried about back and forth with the governor or the PBA. Everyone's going to do their political games. That's fine. I'm very clear. I don't accept homelessness on the street. I don't accept homelessness on the subway. Look, we've added 2,000 more police officers in the last 2 years. So we can do a lot more quality of life enforcement, so we can deal with a lot of the everyday conditions. And thank God, as crime has gone down consistently, especially violent crime, the NYPD can focus more on issues like homelessness. We have the biggest outreach effort we've ever had. So we've actually put the people in, the resources in to actually reach these folks. That's what we have to do, but we have to do more. We just have to keep doing more until we seriously reduce that number on the street.
Even you mentioned the fact of mental illness being a big factor with the homeless. So what, have you done anything to put in place, something to address that?
Well, so there's two parts to it. One is getting people off the street, which takes that very intensive outreach. Imagine if someone's been on the street a long time, especially, and they don't trust anyone and they don't feel comfortable going into a shelter. It takes a lot of work to win their trust. It's a person-to-person thing, but it can be done. And then to get them to a facility, usually a smaller facility or a faith-based facility where they might feel comfortable and safer. It's working. We have a lot more to do, but we've found the model is working. The second is to go to the root cause. And the initiative my wife has led, the Thrive NYC initiative, is about getting mental health services to be available all throughout New York City in a variety of ways, starting in our schools, in fact, and identifying the problems early. A lot of what you're seeing on the street is the result of a mental health issue that could have been caught 20 years ago, 30 years ago in someone's life, and they could have gotten treatment then. It would never have ended up with them being on the street. So we're trying to get at the root cause by making mental health services widely available for the first time in the city's history. And I think when you come back 10, 20 years from now, you're going to see that was an important game changer.
Let me ask you something. You're talking about putting 90 shelters in the 5 boroughs, right? Why won't you release where you want to put those shelters before Election Day?
Because we don't have the places yet.
You're not concerned that people might be really upset that it's in their neighborhood?
They will be upset. And in fact, I think it was important to tell people well in advance of the election that this was the plan. Because we're not trying to fake anybody on this.
You just don't have the sites.
We don't have the sites. I mean, finding a site, you don't just say, hey, I'm going to put a shelter. You have to find a site that's appropriate, and you have to make a contract and everything else. Okay. Here's the reality. We've got a huge number of folks right now in shelter who are in pay-by-the-day hotels, which makes no sense for them or the taxpayer. We've got people in these sites called clusters, which are older buildings that are not in good shape. We've said we're going to get out of all of those. We're going to replace them with modern facilities. It's going to be all over the city in proportion to how many homeless come from that area. So if 100 people in a neighborhood became homeless, we want enough shelter in that area for 100 people, and proportionally all over the city. This will replace a lot of much worse places that we now send homeless folks. And then we'll have a stable system, and we want to have people near their neighborhood. You know, kids have been sent with their parents 1 borough, 2 borough away when they're homeless. They can't get to their school. If you're, God forbid, your family is homeless, we want you to be near where your school is.
I'm going to interrupt you because we're going to have you stay for another segment.
Could you stay for another segment? Yeah, because we got a lot more.
You're feeling comfy, right?
Yes.
Okay.
He's right here.
Yeah. And of course, that was your campaign theme, as you know, right?
All right. Can we talk a little bit about the statues? Yeah. You know, big movement right now. You have a commission looking into what statues are going to come down. Some people are upset.
Or if any come down.
Okay, that's good because, I don't know if you heard what the Cardinal said.
No.
If you only put up perfect statues of perfect people, the only statue we'd have up is Jesus. Now, a lot of Italian Americans, are on your case. They don't want Columbus coming down. Right. They understand that he was not a perfect explorer. Yeah. Where do you stand on that? Because some people are concerned the commission is, meeting in secret.
Rosanna, it is about addressing these really tough historical questions, right? We put up these monuments to all kinds of people, and then later on a lot more information comes out because we're learning more as a society. And people have strong feelings all around on them. What I want is something that helps us address this for the long term. It's not about, this commission may take down no statues, and of course they're going to propose something to me, and then I have to go through a whole process with that too.
Would you ixnay if they came back to you and said Columbus has to come down? Would you say?
I'm not going to prejudge. I want to be very clear. I'm not going to prejudge because it's not just about Columbus or about folks who own slaves or Confederate officers. It's about everything.
You know, the other statutes they're looking at?
They're only beginning the process, and what we said is let New Yorkers raise their concerns.
Because they
New
can
Yorkers
do a
say,
survey online or something,
right,
correct?
They're saying to any New Yorker who has a concern about something, put it in, and look, this is what I'd like to see. Can we try and get to a single universal approach? The Cardinal has a good point. If we say, look, almost everyone's made mistakes, and some of the people we think very highly of also have mistakes, how do you address that? Because the concerns have been raised by people who really feel it. How do you address it? One example that I've talked about publicly is you could put additional historical markers up to provide some of the balance. The National Park Service, for example, if you go to some of the sites around the country, they often do that where they say, here's different perspectives on what happened here, right? That might be part of the solution. But what I don't want to do, one, I don't want to prejudge. Two, I want to emphasize, everyone who says, well, wait, for me, I think this, well, there's another person who thinks the other way. I'd like us to get to something that we say, this is our universal approach. Let's put this to bed and move on. Because in the end, I value why people care. But the monuments, the statues are really not the issues that matter to everyday New Yorkers. They care about the subways, they care about jobs, they care about schools, right? That's what we need to get to.
And in light of last month's stabbing as well, a huge concern.
Absolutely.
Which you'll likely have to address as well.
Look, I'm addressing it right now, and I feel it deep. I was a public school parent. My kids are only a few years out of public school, and I felt that tragedy. I went to the wake with Shirlane. It's very painful, and the family's been through something absolutely horrible. We don't want to ever see it happen again. It's the first time in 25 years we lost a child in a school. I want it to be the last time. But I also want to remind you, NYPD runs school safety. And they have been driving down crime and violence in schools consistently. It's down about 35% in the last 5 years. We have to be really proud of the work the NYPD has done, working with educators, but we also are reaching kids differently. Kids can resolve a lot of their own problems before it ever comes to something. And we've worked on peer mediation and a lot of other approaches. Let kids have a venue to talk out their problems and address them before something worse happens. We've got to do a lot more on bullying. We're going to have more to say on that soon. Parents are very upset about bullying. I know that from having been a parent myself of kids in public school. We have to make sure bullying is never ignored, never swept under the rug, because it can lead to something worse. But overall, the schools have gotten consistently safer, and that's something we should be proud of.
One last question. Would it kill you to root for the Yankees?
Well, if you're a real baseball fan.
But even Mayor Bloomberg, who
Mayor
was
Bloomberg
not a Yankee,
wasn't a baseball fan.
But
Come on.
he was not a Yankee
Rosanna,
fan.
don't
but
do
at least he went to
revisionist
Yankee
history.
Stadium.
He wasn't a baseball fan.
Would
He
you
didn't
go
care.
to Yankee Stadium?
I've been very clear about this. And by the way, a lot of Mets fans would agree with me, I think.
Well, then would you go to Citi Field?
Oh, I've been to Citi Field a ton of times.
So you'd go to Citi Field, but not Yankee Stadium?
That's right, exactly.
And there's no way we could change your mind?
Well, let me say this.
Well, I'm telling you the truth. I think you like the truth, right? If you're a fan and you love your team and you grow up with your team your whole life, especially when you're a kid, you should not change.
You're just physically unable
You just got to be who you are if you're a real fan. Now, I said, had the Yankees won, I would have very happily given them a parade because they're an amazing team. They deserve a lot of credit. If they win next year, and I think they have a really good chance next year, we'll give them the greatest parade they ever had.
I'm going to get you a Yankee hat.
And I'll say after all
and
the
I'll
time.
hold it like this, but I won't put it on.
After all the time that you have been away, it is certainly glad that you
I am
come
glad
back.
to be back, and welcome to the show, and
Thank
it's
you.
great to be with you
Thank
again.
you,
I
Mayor.
look forward to coming back, and the people will make a decision in 2 weeks. And if they choose me, it'll be my joy to come
You're
back
not
and spend
nervous,
time.
are you? You're
Okay,
not thinking...
If you take an election lightly, that's at your own peril. I'm out there all over the city talking to New Yorkers, all 5 boroughs. We're going to keep doing that right up to Election Day.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Mayor,
you.
thank you for being with us. We
My
appreciate
pleasure.
All right.
it. All right.
That was some talk with the mayor. We'll have to think about this a little bit.
Yeah, think about that.
Okay, we're coming right back with more of Good
Stay
Day
with
New
us.
York.